All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is the School Building Committee for Thursday, August 11, 2022. Welcome, everyone. First item on our agenda is the approval of the July 28 minutes. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Thank you, Mary. Is there a second? Steve, thanks. Are any corrections for the minutes? I didn't see anything. So then all in favor of approving the July 28 minutes, please indicate. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, okay, we've got Chris, Kathy, Madison, and Rich all abstaining. Okay, you got that, Tasha? Okay, all right. Then moving right along, we'll go on to the contractor update. Al?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Share my screen. Can everyone see the photos?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay. So first are the aerial photos. This is a photo of the building demolition, which started this week. The abatement in this area was complete last week. They started the abatement this week. They're currently doing the foundations and slabs in this area. They still have a little bit more abatement to do in the main building, but that they'll be moving right along to this addition over here once this is done. This is the storm drainage that's in the new parking area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's this is about a third done. There was one on the other side over on this side, which is complete, and that's graded off ready for playground over there.
And so regarding the abatement and the demolition, how is that schedule-wise?
Actually, we're looking pretty good. I think we're going to finish up about a week to a week and a half early.
Okay, that's good news.
Yeah, but this opens up a lot of room. Once this storm drainage goes in and it gets backfilled, it opens up a big area parking lot that they can start on. So it's got a real good start. It's just another aerial view.
Can I ask a question about abatement?
Sure.
One of the things that we heard during the earlier discussions about whether or not to build this school was that there were contaminants present of various kinds, and I'm wondering what you found in terms of asbestos, lead, PCBs, whatever needs to be abated.
Everything has been pretty much the plan. We do have a small change order for some additional glue dabs on blackboards and tack boards, but that's the only thing extra that we found.
But in terms of finding some of those, there's no surprises. Those substances have all been present, but they are being abated. Is that correct?
Yes, the only additional item that we've had is we had to test some additional blackboards, and they did come in positive for asbestos. So we did have to remove that, but it was, it wasn't a large change order.
This is Adam with Colliers. Just to expound for 20 seconds. So the hazardous materials consultant Langen, who is retained to go through the building and identify the hazardous materials, is the one that picked out all those locations. So when Al says that there was the discovered condition, which we're still reviewing, that was in addition to all the elements already known by the hazardous material consultant. So for all intents and purposes, the abatement occurred in alignment with the expectations.
Correct. So this is the area of the other storm drainage system that I had photos of at the last meeting. So this has been complete, tested, backfilled, and actually the playground contractor started layout over here today. Just another aerial view.
Those circles that we're seeing on that picture weren't the bike path, were they?
This one here. No, the bike path is farther down this hill, I believe,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So this is just a regular playground area.
Yes. Just another aerial view of the storm drainage. And a little farther away. This is the area where there's a new playground set up over here. So once this is done, we'll finish the curbing for the bus loop and start getting this ready for paving while they work on the parking lot. This is an aerial view of the building from the west side. These are other activity areas here as well, which are coming along pretty good. This is the exterior building, a north side. They've got the e-pay going here. They should finish this up within the next couple of days. We have the e-pay for the canopy. We have a delivery date for that. I believe it's coming in 2 weeks or a week and a half, and then that will start going in.
Is the framing for the canopy about to start?
Yes. Yes, it's actually, the wood is in their shop now. They're just preparing it for delivery.
Okay. And those are the posts, those are where the posts will be bolted down, we can see. And is that starting, I mean, relatively soon?
Yes, that will be starting in the next week and a half. This is the north side of the gym. They've started the e-pay on this side. All the windows glass has been installed. This is the loading dock area. The e-pay siding is going on here as well. Masonry is finishing up for the retaining wall. The curtain walls are going in. They're trying to get this glassed in by tomorrow. Well, we'll see. This is the east side of the building, area B. You can see a lot of the, it's been cleaned up quite a bit. We have base down for concrete and asphalt. This is the whole activity area over here. This is the south activity area. This is the south side of the building. South side of B wing. Some ground pictures. This is the building demo, 65 edition. Storm drainage in the parking lot. It's the e-pay siding going on in the nook in area B. Once this e-pay is done and the softened fascias are done, they'll start the concrete walks. Retaining wall itself is done. It's just waiting on the cap. The cap, we need to get another sample and get it installed for inspection by the landscape architect. It's the e-pay siding at the gym. Installing e-pay siding at the gym. Loading dock area. This is area A, west entrance. They do have all the entrance frames in. The aluminum frames are starting to put glass in now. The fencing contractor has started. He's got his chain link fence up around the back side or the east side of the property. He's done his chain link around the pump house. And he also has the board fence, which will be along the west side of the property and the south side of the property in the front by the road. And along that property line.
And that fence goes all the way around the backside of the pump house, right?
Yes, yep. This is A corridor, A wing. We're getting ready to do, we'll do ceiling grids in here next. We've already started all the rooms. A classroom is just about ready for finishes. But it's been too hot and humid to really do anything. These are the A classroom toilets. So every toilet in A wing now is done. There's one for every classroom. And then there's a few in admin too, which those the tile has been done as well.
So
We-
Al, there was no issue, there's no issue in A with the dusting.
We took cores today. We did 2 cores in A, two cores in B, lower, 2 cores in B upper. We're having those analyzed. It's still, we do have dusting in A. We just don't know the extent of the issue. That's why we're having the cores tested.
But so you could go ahead and do this floor, these floor people weren't as particular? Well, how come it was okay to do this tiling and not others?
Yeah, this is not affected by the dusting slab. The tile work can go on that slab, no problem. It's only for the resilient. It has a glue that just won't bond to the dusting concrete.
I see.
This is
Thank you.
more of a mortar base mastic, stuff,
Uh-huh.
So we started putting toilets in the A-wing classrooms, following the floors. B-wing classrooms, a lot of finishes are getting installed now. It's basically ready for other finishes, flooring and acoustic panels and so forth. In B-wing, we've done a lot of the ceiling tiles. We have been keeping this area under 55 degrees humidity, so we don't see a problem with that. These are the hand wash sinks up in front of the unisex toilets. Those are installed now. We have toilet partitions are coming next week. They're supposed to be delivered to their shop tomorrow. These are temporary sensors that and humidity sensors that we've installed just to keep track of temperature and humidity. And we've been able to keep the relative humidity below 55 is what we need. But we are having a hard time with the temperatures. This was taken today and it was a fairly cool day, but it's, almost 90 degrees inside. There's another one, again, pretty consistent with the relative humidity. This is stair one, the ceiling went in and all the rough-in was complete and now it's painted. So the stick-apple is going to come down. In the kitchen, we got the epoxy floor in. We're going to put protection on this tomorrow. And then we can start the porcelain tile out here. This is that curtain wall in the cafe. They said they're putting all the glass in the entryways. MEP roughing is ongoing. This is all the plumbing for the heat pumps, which we'll need for air conditioning or heating. And they've started putting in, this is a speaker. They've started putting in some finishes for the electrical specialties. So that's it for my photos. Any questions on photos?
Chris?
Al, I noticed the curtain wall in the cafe, the gym, walls, they're not done. The glass isn't in yet. You're still holding off because of the DOAS units, or what's the holdup there?
This curtain wall here?
Yeah,
Yeah, they've just installed this. It's secure. They're going through like each pane now and caulking each of the openings to install glass. So they were hoping to have glass in here tomorrow, but if it's not done tomorrow, it'll be done, Monday for sure.
because isn't all of that hindering your ability to get more conditioned air happening?
It is, but we don't have anything to give us conditioned air. We have some AC units in B, but they're really not doing what we need them to do.
So what's the projection now on the DOAS?
Actually, I got an email from Sullivan Benson this morning. Can everyone see this email?
Yep.
I asked him, any update on delivery of DOAS? He says, we need the main fan section. It hasn't shipped. Swan is supposed to be getting an update. So I called him back and asked, I wanted to ask him, have they shipped anything? Because it sounds like they shipped something, but not the main fan section. But he was not in. I left him a message to call me back. So I should have update tomorrow and find out if he has received anything and what the expected ship date of this main fan section is.
Because just like you decided at the last meeting to do a different walk-in, I mean, how much longer do we wait for this DOAS unit? And before we say we have to get something else?
I think it'd be more time to get something else, probably.
This is Adam McCullers. It's a much different animal than a walk-in cooler unit, which is its own compartmentalized thing. There's a design process. It's very customized. To switch to a different manufacturer would be like starting from scratch. It's not a simple one for one.
No, I realize that. However, we've been waiting for this thing for months, and now it's starting to hold up the job because you can't do certain things unless you have a conditioned space, and it's August.
Right.
So Al, if you get an update on the delivery date, could you send me an email, which I can forward on to the committee then?
Yes, I will.
But the pathway that you're planning to take that into the building hasn't changed, has it? It's
No,
still
it
right.
hasn't.
Okay. And with regards to Chris's question about the curtain walls and stuff, are basically all the other ones going to get finished in the next, very short time frame?
Yeah, I expect by the end of next week, all the glass will be in the curtain walls and all the temporary doors will be installed. Because we don't put the new, if we're going to use the opening for entrance and exit, we don't put the new doors in. We put temporary doors in, and then when we're just about, a week before we're done, we put the permanent doors in.
Oh, Al, this is Jeff. What about the sunshades all around the building? Are those going to go in? They have to go in before the caps, right?
Yes, they're waiting on those now.
Okay.
And how is progress in terms of caulking all the other windows?
Caulking on all the other windows are complete. We're missing we're missing a clear story window in above the cafe, which hopefully will be here next week. We're missing a couple of operable windows in A. Then there's a couple of pieces of custom glass that we had to order, and but that should be in sometime next week. Don't see a problem with that. You know, but we have protection in the opening.
Right.
Al, the missing windows, are those because they broke on site or they weren't somewhere screwed up, or what happened?
No, we had the clear story windows. It was large openings, and we had one frame that had it was like where two of the window units came together, and there was a large gap between the windows. So they ordered a new frame to close that gap, and they have to order one other piece of glass.
Okay.
They could have put a piece of flashing there, but the detail caused for the frame to butt together.
Thank you.
Oh, Chris?
Al, not to beat you up about the DOAS, but like you said, you know, the fan hadn't shipped. I thought we had talked about getting that in pieces anyway, and that we were gonna assemble it inside.
Correct.
Is that kind of what you're asking this guy, Eric, about?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The-
where's
the-
the box?
Yeah, his response to me is, we need the main fan section. So he's kind of indicating he's got some parts delivered, but he's missing the fan section. That's the way I read it.
Right, but does he know you're willing to take the box and start assembling it inside?
Oh, absolutely. If he's got stuff there, we'll take it on site and start, setting it in place anyways. But I'll find that out tomorrow. I'll shoot you guys an email as soon as I have some information. Well, send it to Randy.
Yeah. And I
Just,
would,
just for everyone's background, in addition to it, so being shipped was from the manufacturer to Sullivan Benson, who Eric worked for. They have a number of weeks, I believe, Al, correct me if I'm wrong, a number of weeks of assembly work, coordination work, that kind of thing in their shop before it even gets to the site. So the ship date does not mean that it's shipped to go to the project site yet. There's still other work to be done once it's shipped. The original, the original delayed date, if that makes sense, was July 29th, I believe. And rather than getting a notice of shipment, Newfield got a notice of it's not being shipped with no date associated with it. So it's not just you're correct, Chris McNabo, about the plan. But in terms of the main fan getting there, even if the box is ready, there's still other work that needs to be done by the subcontractor.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
okay. And regarding the other procurement items,
Okay, I got those.
okay. Any other particular issues you want to highlight for us?
Yes. Wall coverings. I called Lisa over at Wolf Gordon. I've been sending, I sent our painting contractor and wall covering contractor a letter basically stating if I didn't have an order confirmation by Friday. No, I had to give them a 3-day notice, so it's Monday. If I don't receive an order confirmation by Monday, I'm going to buy the wall covering. So I called Lisa over at Wolf Gordon. She sent me the cost, an invoice. So if I do have to pull the trigger with her, I have that invoice. I reviewed the cost that she sent me with the schedule of values of our painter, and the cost of the wall covering is more than the schedule of values for wall covering that my painter has on his pay app. So I think he made a huge mistake, and he's not telling us that he made a huge mistake. And I don't know, he's trying to go. I think he's trying to buy another a cheaper wall covering. So
Can you clarify what wall coverings these are?
these are like the heavy duty wall coverings in the corridor.
I see. They line the wall to protect for damage.
Well,
Yes.
there's the wainscoting, and the Wolf Gordon product though is the tree pattern product.
Correct. It's a digital wall covering.
Oh,
So those are full height walls.
So I've got a call into Brian, the boss, and I need to talk to him about how we're going to proceed. So I'll have an update on that tomorrow. But it's probably going to end up where we're going to buy the wall covering and have him install it, and then work out the money somehow, maybe on the job or something.
okay.
I wish he just would have told us 2
Right.
months ago, I got a
Yeah.
problem, but he didn't.
Sounds like he still hasn't told you.
No, he hasn't.
This sounds like something that another seller could do. I mean, printing heavy duty wallpaper doesn't sound like a single maker.
This is pretty specialized, right, Jeff? I mean,
Yeah, it's custom, and Wolf Gordon
Custom,
is a high end.
Yeah, and we've gone through all the layout and all that, so it's ready to buy and ready. It could be shipped tomorrow if I send him money. You know what I mean? So we're not going to change the digital. I'm not sure if there's any options for a substitute for the other corridor walls. But maybe we can talk tomorrow.
So I'm sorry, I must have blanked out for a minute, but are you saying that the real problem is that he wants to charge us more than the original estimate?
No. The problem is I'm not sure what he did. He may have just thought it was regular wall covering and put down a price for regular vinyl wall covering and not realized it was the heavy duty wall covering in the corridor and the digital wall covering in these other areas. It's two very expensive items. And I think I just think he had a bad number out where he just plugged the number in without doing any research at all on the product.
Yeah, I think rather than compromising the quality, I think that Al, you might have a good strategy. Just buy it out and get it going, have him install it and work it out later. Because if we start doing substitution requests on things like that to compromise the quality, I think we're in for a big wave of trouble.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, another item I saw in the procurement log, Al, is the variable frequency drives for the heat pump, which I don't recall seeing before.
Yeah, that just came up this past week. Where is it? Yeah, geothermal heat pump Vfds. We got a late notice from Sullivan Benson on 8/5, which was 6 days ago, that these Vfds were not shipping till 9/12.
And so the heat pumps won't function without those, I assume.
Correct. The 9/12 is a month away.
Right. Because even without the DOAS unit, could the heat pumps help cool? Or do you need the DOAS for that?
They, from what I understand, they will do like a they can basically circulate air, but there's no conditioned air. The air is not conditioned. You're just circulating the air within the building.
Okay.
Similar. I mean, we have fans all over the place too, and they help.
Right.
Circulation of air in the building does help. But,
So that, can I jump in here, Andy?
Sure.
So
Go ahead.
we've coordinated with Craig Raza, the mechanical engineer, and we've talked about the DOAS unit for a long time now. We've talked about the heat pumps basically this week. The issue is with the DOAS unit is that it provides the fresh air. So you need it for occupancy, but it's your fresh air swap out. It doesn't condition, it doesn't do any of that. The heat pumps are what drive the actual air conditioning portion of it, but they don't provide the fresh air. So up until this week, the notion is that the heat pumps and the other portions of the mechanical systems, minus the generator and some of these other items that have been pushed a bit, would be able to provide conditioned air to the spaces. It just wouldn't have the fresh air intake that's required for the final occupancy of the building. So you could get cooler temperatures and whatnot. If there are no variable frequency drives, the heat pumps cannot function. So the fact that those are delayed by some amount will impact the overall sequencing of the building and the completion of some of these spaces. I would even say that the heat pumps could be more impactful than the DOAS unit, because the DOAS unit, like I said, is just providing fresh air as opposed to final conditioning and whatnot. This issue came up early mid this week in terms of how it impacts the overall sequencing. One of the things that we, Craig Raza, Jeff, myself, Joe in the field, and the new field team need to review and coordinate is how this actually impacts the sequencing of work. And does it extend beyond the DOAS unit's initial projected delay? Is there alternative means of providing conditioning in the spaces to finish the work? The critical index, as you see the thermostats and humidity sensors that Al was showing photos of, the critical index for the interior of the building is not just that it's hot and it's uncomfortable, but that a number of the finishes and floor spaces cannot, by specification, be put in if it's that hot. So for the most glaring example is the flooring in a lot of the spaces, not the tile flooring, but the flooring that's adhered, where it needs to be maintained at effectively room temperature for a number of days prior to installation. And then you can install the flooring. But if it's 89 degrees, it just won't stick and it'll start popping as soon as the temperature changes and the glue fails. So that's where there's a lot of the risk exposure with this new indication of the variable frequency drives being delayed. Al, I presume have you gotten an update as to when those might be shipped? Is it confirmed or is it still up in the air?
I have not got a confirmation. The email we got from Sullivan Benson, indicated it was 9/12. When I talk to Eric tomorrow about the DOAS parts and pieces, I'll clarify this as well. Try to get a firm date.
So to kind of bring it back home, that we've been discussing here today, the questions about the curtain wall and enclosing the building, the VFDs and the heat pumps, and whether or not they should be used for final conditioning before the building's done, or whether or not there should be temporary humidification and dehumidification and air conditioning. All of these items interplay. And in addition, if they really aren't shipping until 9/12, we'll be out of August. And so we need to look at what the ambient air temperature is in September. It probably isn't going to be a balmy 95 degrees and 300% humidity like it seemed like the past couple of weeks. So the VFDs is a substantial issue, and that's something that we're going to need, the entire team needs to work on over the next week and to identify what the actual impacts are, what the sequencing needs to be, and how these interior spaces can get finished out. Because unlike the DOAS unit, which you leave a portion of wall open, you bring it in, you install it, you seal up the walls, and you're basically done. With the overall conditioning of the space, heat pumps and VFDs aside, if it's still 89 degrees in there, you can't finish the floors, you can't finish some of the millwork, which means you can't deliver furniture, which means that even if occupancy is done, what are you going to use a space with no furniture in it? So there's a lot of dominoes that need to fall into place with some of the ambient conditions inside the building, if you will.
I have a question about the planning for this. I know that when we were back from the beginning, we knew that certain weather conditions were going to impact scheduling. And I'm wondering whether there was an assumption that the heat pumps would be functioning during the course of the summer, or was there an assumption that the weather would not be so severe that it would not stop work?
So in terms of, I'll speak a bit, and then I'll see if Al or Jeff want to jump in. In terms of the overall schedule, obviously there's been the metal deck delay that we extended by a month, but that was just a month. There was an anticipation that the building was going to be enclosed in April, May, whatnot. Obviously, that's not yet complete. And so as you know from the last substantial date change from the contract, it was mid-August, August 12th. It was anticipated the building would be able to be done effectively minus a couple of outstanding units like the DOAS unit. Obviously, we're not there yet. So in terms of anticipating doing this type of work in the dog days of summer while the building isn't enclosed, that was not anticipated.
Can one say that the delay in getting the parts to the heat pumps upset a planned move-in process, completion process, a scheduling process, or are we just working with the fact that the building wasn't enclosed in time?
Say there's a number of factors in play. Obviously, the heat pumps can't be finished without the VFDs, but there are other components that are also still not yet done. We talked about at the last owners meeting that some of the lines, the water lines that feed the VFDs haven't been flushed yet. And some of the hookups haven't been complete. So there certainly is some impact from the VFDs, but all of these things work in concert. And so even if you had all of the VFDs on site and the heat pumps there and all the ducts were in place, if you didn't have the exterior glazing and walls, like you pointed out, it's like air conditioning your house with the door wide open. It's not going to do much.
Right. Okay, this is an off-the-wall question. Have you guys been in touch with the state? Are we in any kind of difficulty with state approval of any of this work or plans or timing or anything?
I'll take that one, Adam. No, we have not been involved with the state specifically on this project. The state is well aware of procurement issues right now when we reviewed other change orders with the state. So I don't anticipate this affecting anything from a state funding standpoint. It's more everything that Adam laid out as far as scheduled deliveries impacts both to construction and also impacts to furniture, equipment, and delivery schedules that were anticipated to start on September 20th.
Okay, Chris, you've had your hand up for a while.
Thanks. Adam, are the VFDs really hard to find things as well, or do other companies make the ones that'll fit in our unit? Is that, an exclusive thing that we have to get from one purveyor, or could we go elsewhere?
My inclination is that's somewhat similar to the mechanical units. It's likely not as involved, but it's not as simple as you have this product, you go to that product. All of these are designed and have fairly tight tolerances as part of a complicated mechanical system. For example, the freezer was a little simpler. It needs to maintain some amount of insulation. There's a horsepower of a motor, that kind of thing. With this, there are a lot of tolerances. So, in abstraction, if this manufacturer all of a sudden shutter their doors, could we get additional VFDs? Yes, I'm sure there are other manufacturers. At this point, would it make sense to go back to the drawing board and look at new specifications and try to get an alternative manufacturer? That I don't know. Like I said, we just heard about this today. So part of it is we need to understand what the crux of the problem is rather. Is it some market-driven problem where none of the manufacturers can get this certain chip from overseas? Or is it similar to the freezer unit where there are other manufacturers that could potentially do it? It's just the one had an issue and couldn't deliver. So we're still, your questions both on the DOAS, but to a greater extent, the VFD, obviously we're going to look at all the options to see what makes the most sense. But if I had to just estimate right now, it probably would be more efficacious to identify where these are rather than trying to resubmit. But we're looking into that and we'll get the data from the vendors.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Al? Okay, seeing none, then thank you, Al, for that update.
Thank
Uh,
you.
And we can turn it over to Jeff for the architect update.
Okay, I don't have much. I was out last week on vacation, so I'm playing catch up, but basically just responding to RFIs and submittals, and that I'm due to go to the site soon here for another walkthrough and another site observation report. So we'll see. Looks like they're moving along quite fast, so I gotta get over there and start moving through the project again.
Okay. Questions for Jeff? All right. So then let's move on to the OPM update. So Adam?
Yes, so we actually talked about a number of the topics I was going to bring up with Al. The 4 focal points for the project are demo and abatement, the site work, the interior of the building, and then the exterior envelope. As Al has kind of alluded to, the demolition has gone very well, which helps alleviate some of the stress on the site portion of the project, which we knew was a critical factor in getting the parking lots done, all the attendant to stormwater and utilities and all the things done. So that is, I don't want to understate that that's a very good piece of progress that has been made. In terms of the rest of the portion of the site, it's moving along. But the key focal points are the interior and the exterior. Just as a point of comparison, we had intended originally to have furniture delivery on September 6th. That is not going to happen. And we then shifted to a potential target date of September 20th to allow for some of these spaces to be built out. Based on where we're at, that is also not going to happen. And so we're looking at the furniture vendors to identify storage, redelivery, that kind of thing. Case in point, you'll be seeing probably at the next meeting some sort of addendum to the various manufacturers for furniture for those storage fees. So that way they're not showing up on a truck and being delivered in the middle of a construction site where they can get ruined and in the way. So it is critical now. Often people have asked, or committee members have asked, what's the biggest thing that I'm focused on and concerned about in terms of progress? And really it's getting the building enclosed and resolving these issues with the interior, whether they be the interior humidity and temperature, whether they be some of these items in Jeff's report. All these things are fairly substantial and need to happen and get done. Because as we thought on September 6th, the building was effectively going to be ready, looking like it's a complete building with the exception of one wall section and a DOAS unit that was missing. But we're not going to be there. So that's the critical index for the next coming weeks and up until September, October, when some of these items are going to be resolved. Those are the key elements. So every day we don't have all the glass in, every day we don't have, it's a 90 degrees inside, those are problems. We spoke about the Vfds already and the DOAS. And I'm just going through my notes, apologize again. And some of this got touched while we were talking about the procurement and items with Al. But yeah, that's the substantive focus of those items.
Okay, questions for Adam? Steve?
So I know we're all disappointed that we're falling further and further behind, but at the end of the day, just to put this in context, this is it's going to take a little bit longer to finish the building kind of a situation, as opposed to it's going to affect the quality of the building we get at the end type of situation. Is that accurate?
If the items that keep getting brought up by Jeff and the design team and Colliers get resolved, then that will be true. So Jeff keeps doing his walkthroughs, identifying things that aren't matching what the intent was. As long as the field keeps fixing them, that will be the case.
All right, thank you.
Chris?
Is there a Dollar General being built somewhere that we can steal their parts from? I mean, gosh, they seem to be able to build a building in 4 months. I don't know. I mean, we're not the only school being built. We're not the only people looking for these kinds of parts. If there's a premium to be paid to get some of this stuff, is that a possibility that we might be able to do that?
Fortunately, that does not appear to be something that's there's an opportunity for. To your point, you kind of hit the nail on the head with, Dollar General, just as an example, but you see a lot of these large facilities, whether it be, these big box distribution centers and whatnot. It's just an industry perspective. They have drawn a lot from the supply chain and added stress where there wasn't necessarily in the historic past. And so one can imagine where if a certain builder wants to get 500 of a large number of mechanical units that are all cookie cutter, you can churn them out, versus a more customized one for one building. If you were the manufacturer, how would you allocate resources and get those products in? Case in point, when we had the update from the DOAS unit, or rather when Newfield received the update from the DOAS unit from the manufacturer Dakin, it was extremely boilerplate. It looked like it was a form letter, copy out, paste out the name at the top. But the perception was that this project was one of 1,000 across the country. They got the same letter of just, we're having trouble with supplying products, bear with us. And then just a pro forma head of president, CEO of Dakin International or what have you. So it's kind of I thought, you can get something from Dollar General, but there is just a heavy draw on procurement items, and it's hard. One of the challenges that Colliers and I'm sure Newfield and TSKP are having is staying ahead of what is the critical item of focus. When we started this project, it was roof insulation. Everyone was ringing the bell about roof insulation. And we didn't have that big of an issue with it as compared to some of our other projects, but we did for this one type of roof deck. So it's extremely hard to try to predict and get out ahead.
Okay. Steve?
Where do we stand, a slightly different gear here, where do we stand with respect to the neighbors and the additional screening / buffer planting? I know we're going to get the first round in and then kind of go back for a second look.
So that was the amendment that was approved at the last meeting for TSKP and the landscape architect. So they're doing outreach to the neighbors with regard to what the collaborative approach to what that buffer wants to look like in advance of both this committee seeing it and the Planning and Zoning Commission. So that's in progress. I've not had outreach from the neighbors recently on the buffers. There's been an email here or there about, some lights were left on in construction, and Newfield quickly fixes it so that way it's not shining into their windows at night. But in terms of buffer trees, that's the path forward to the additional scope.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions regarding the OPM update? Okay, then I guess we can move on, Adam, to the PCOs.
So let me share my screen here. So before we get to the PCOs and the quotations, I did want to circle back on the frontage signage. I know this came up at the last meeting, and I've done some additional coordination with the town wayfinding program chair, as well as the signage designer, and just working through some of the logistics to kind of drill this down. So in terms of the type of sign, for example, the way that the wayfinded signage for the entire town has settled was buildings of the nature of the elementary school, where it's a substantial public building. The option across town would be this low stone option, that you see here. And so the font, the color scheme, the whatnot, that's what's been put forth by that committee and is being implemented throughout the town. In terms of, this committee and it's the signage relation to the project, obviously Colliers works for the committee and we'll do as you, if you, anything that the committee wants in this regard. However, I do want to impress that this is what the town has elected to move forward in terms of the signage. And then in terms of the location, I did do some additional due diligence there and working with the signage consultant. And essentially there are two locations that were initially earmarked for this monument sign in relation to the power being brought out there for some of the pin lighting. This dashed line here, it might be a little hard to see where it's gray and a little dash and then gray. That's the property line that separates the project site from the state right of way. So there's a strong recommendation to not have the signage out here in the state right of way as initially suggested here by the signage consultant. That would require a separate permit. And if there's any changes or whatnot in the future, it's on state property. So there's always that conflict as opposed to being on the town property. There's also discussion with the signage consultant about, potentially having it incorporated into the fence here. There's a suggestion not to do that to avoid conflict with some of the signage fencing work that's done as part of this project and who's responsible for putting it in, taking it out while the site is supposed to be getting cleaned up. So you're left sort of with two locations, one as I've kind of drawn here, and then one on the other side. The signage consultant did not recommend having it on this side, largely because A, when you turn into the site from either direction, you're pulling into this lane, not on this side. And more pertinently, B, if you've got some cars parked here, or not parked here, but waiting to exit, they'd be blocking the sign if it's not in the state right of way. And you wouldn't be able to see it, particularly if you're coming from the south. So we've sort of left with this one location. I believe that this tree here was brought up as a point of discussion. This is a new tree that will be flagged in the site by the landscape architect. So it can be shifted out of the way so there's no conflict between the tree and the new sign location. So ultimately, why I'm bringing this back up before the committee is the town planning department, before they put this off as part of the update to the landscape plan for the Planning and Zoning Commission, wanted to ensure that the building committee was in alignment with an overall plan of what the sign needed to be, as well as the costs. So the recommendation in coordination with the town wayfinding and with the wayfinding consultant and their expertise, as well as just some of the project constraints, is to have this sign at this location. And that costs, the estimate from the signage designer was around $20,000, $21,000. They received that by reaching out to one of the companies they know that does this type of work. So the request here tonight, and it doesn't necessarily need a motion. I just want to ensure that before I move forward and reach out to planning and zoning to ensure they don't have any more issues, and before we go out to bid for this, that there isn't any major concerns with this committee. And if that low monument sign with the small amount of uplighting in that location generally aligns and is acceptable to the committee. If there are exceptions, we can review them, but by and large, this is the type of signage that's being installed throughout town for this type of building.
Chris?
Uh,
Mac-
Randy?
Yeah,
Let's make that Chris first and then Tony.
Okay.
so, thanks, Adam. When I looked at the dimensions of the sign, I was surprised that it was about 7 feet tall and 7 feet wide, which is quite large. And two things kind of came up for me. I know you have to have a certain size sign to be able to see it, but since this isn't a school that's going to be used probably for a lot of public events, it's an elementary school, not like a high school or the middle school. And in light of, I don't know, the things that we're doing to make sure that we're ensuring student and teacher safety. I thought it was kind of big, and I didn't know if we had given any consideration to making it smaller or less. I don't know, noticeable, flashy.
Imposing.
I don't know, something like that.
The having sat in on the wayfinding signage committee, a couple of their meetings, in terms of the size, there was far more iterations that had come up there. So in terms of the actual dimensions and whatnot, I don't know that there was something smaller considered. I know there were some of those bigger, Mansfield type giant monument signs that were considered, and were ultimately not recommended for the broader spectrum of these types of buildings. I can tell, the only thing with regard to the size I can tell you is that the consultant did check against the regulations to ensure it wasn't so abnormally large that didn't fit within the zoning regs. And it didn't surpass that limit in that regard. So the answer to your question is I don't know that there's been a consideration for a smaller sign necessarily, but it didn't strike the wayfinding consultant as being particularly large.
Okay, we'll do Tony and then Rich.
I would certainly support reducing the size. These new entrance signs to Mansfield certainly establish our identity as different from stores. But I think they are, my own personal feeling about them is they've been a little bit grandiose. But I also wondered if there was going to be a sign on 195.
There's no, I mean, there may be one of those brown signs, those sort of elementary school this way. To be honest, I don't know. I know there was discussions about that type of signage throughout town. I don't have that answer in front of me. It wasn't resolved the last I had heard about it, and there's been subsequent developments. I can ask about it, but I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Rich?
It's a nice sign. I was just wondering if there's a way to kind of incorporate some of the Mansfield elements that we're seeing in the signage around town and kind of reflect the fact that it's an elementary school. And I don't know if there's a way to kind of marry the two or merge the two, but, I see this sign and it could be any building anywhere, but, this is an elementary school after all. And I was wondering if there's some way to kind of maybe do that.
I would say that to get to that level of specificity, we would be going to the point of retaining a new set of signage design services to do that. We can explore that, but in terms of having some sort of signage installed, generally in conjunction with the opening of the building, that would be the time to take to do that would be beyond the extent. And at this point, getting this resolved and potentially getting this out to bid in short order would be required to have this be open and have this sign be up in general alignment with the actual school opening. That would definitely not be the case should we try to get a different signage consultant to design something.
Okay, Chris Kiefner, and then Kathy, and then Tony.
I'd like to just second and third and fourth, if you can do it, the size. It's just too big. We said this last time. I don't know why. Adam, this is the same thing we saw last time when you showed it to us. It's as high, it's as wide, and it's just not, it's not to scale. And I agree with Rich. I don't know what you do, and I'm sure that's much more complicated as far as having it bring in some element of elementary feel. But regardless, it's too big. It mixes too many styles. It's just not that appealing in general. So let's not make it big.
Randy, if I may, I mean, this process came very late to the table and was town
Well,
driven.
Scott, I'm sorry, you don't need to defend the process or
No,
anything else.
well, I was
aesthetic.
just going to suggest that, maybe there's a subcommittee to this building committee that reaches back out to the town who was driving this, and that this was put upon the committee, to help move that forward. And maybe there's a subcommittee they could get formed
Well-
from the building committee. Because in essence, what Adam is doing is just reporting.
I get it. Yeah, which is why him defending it isn't
Coming up.
necessary.
Okay, I think Kathy next and then Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. I'm in agreement that it's too big. I feel in light of what we're looking at, that to point out where our elementary school is, to put up a brown sign and say, come this way to the elementary school, it does not make sense in terms of safety. I agree with what Chris McNabo said. You know, we should be going away from that kind of thing. We don't have events going on at the elementary school the way we do at other schools in town. And I would prefer it's as low key as possible. We don't need a sign on 195. People that need to get to the elementary school are going to know how to get there. Thank you.
Okay, and then Tony.
I think Tony had to leave.
Oh, okay. So Adam, do you think that that there could be some feedback that we would like the sign a little smaller?
In terms of size, I think that can probably be achieved if it is largely the same functional sign, but I don't know what the dimensions the committee might prefer would be, but just throwing something out there, if it's, it's supposed to being 7 feet high and 7 feet wide, if it's 5 by 5 or what have you. I don't think that is outside the realm of what the signage consultant might be able to change on their drawings. It's just should just be a dimensional shift. If that's what the committee wants to entertain for this project.
Yeah,
I can certainly reach out for
That would be a beginning. I mean, if you just look at the thing in itself, don't pull it back up again, but there's a whole lot of blank space on the top. And for the sake of putting the seal on there, shrink the seal if you have to, and justify the letters to the left and make more space. Just clean it up, frankly, instead of art it up. It's all very arted up.
So to that point, if there are more stylistic design considerations, then I would echo Scott's suggestion that there be some subcommittee of this committee or what have you to identify that, to go
Okay.
through that process.
Randy, I'll volunteer for such a subcommittee if you want to create it.
okay. All right, so we'll take that under advisement. And Mary, you have a comment?
I do, thank you. Adam, I was just wondering if you might have easily accessible the dimensions of some of the other designs you had showed us, not last time, maybe not even the time before, but originally we looked, there was an image of the circular sign that we see coming into town from Willimantic. Did the town just kind of take all those off of the table? I know that I've heard people in this committee say that that might be something they were more amenable to than the big one that we're looking at now.
So that circular sign you referenced, I brought that up a number of months ago.
Yeah,
That sign and the large, just block letter Mansfield sign were part of the documents that the wayfinding signage consultant for the broader town effort, they had those signs, they saw those signs as part of the exploratory effort. So in terms of it, as I sit here, I don't recall those being, option A that just wasn't selected, and this was option B.
Okay.
It was a wholesale different selection of various designs and styles and whatnot. It wasn't just those two were thrown by the wayside per se. It was a much more involved effort involving ensuring that the signage reflected the individual character of the town, as well as the various, how do we incorporate the various neighborhoods into it? How do we ensure that we're respectful of, but different than Yukon and their signage and wayfinding, for example. So it was a fairly comprehensive effort, it would appear, in that regard. Not just it wasn't that this consultant came up with this design, one other, and then the circle sign, and the circle tile failed. answers your question.
I was wondering if we had, though, I was thinking more about the dimensions of that,
Oh,
like
I see.
as a point of comparison. You know what I mean? If this one is 7 by 7, what is that other one looking like? If it's 6.5 by 6.5, then, you know, it's kind of a moot point in terms of size. But if you don't have it, that's fine. I don't want to bog us down with that. I was just curious if it was something easily accessible.
Yeah, but
Looking at it,
we're operating on one committee. There's a whole parallel townwide thing that's going on. And so we're trying to meet in the middle between the two groups. Chris McNamara?
How about, I'm grateful that Chris said he'd be on a subcommittee, but how about if we just asked for the sign at different dimensions? Like take this current sign and make it half as big and see what that looks like a 3.5 or a 3 foot by 3 foot kind of sign. Can we still see the address if we're waiting for a UPS delivery, or, some of that kind of stuff that would be, you have to have a finding mechanism, but rather than redesigning the whole thing, I think that would shrink that Mansfield logo substantially, and it might do the trick rather than starting from scratch again if we have to have a sign.
I can ask that question.
Yeah.
If that's what the committee pleases, that's no problem.
Yeah, I think we go there and see if we can't reduce the size and see where it would still be functional.
It may make sense to request that the consulting team that's working on these signs possibly attend the next building committee meeting, because I think it's always more effective to hear the direct feedback from a one-to-one relationship versus it being told or passed through. And I think you probably could drive this thing to completion quicker. So we'll let Adam see what he can do as far as getting some revisions, get those in the committee's hands, but then potentially for the next agenda, next meeting, I might recommend trying to get that individual to attend this meeting.
Okay.
No problem.
Good.
All right, any other questions on the signage before we move on to procurement and PCOs?
Okay, we can move on.
All right, so first item up is PCO 84R2. This is for additional attachments required for the solar panel systems. So in brief summary, the solar panel systems across the roofs are sort of two different styles. One is where there is pitched roofs. Those are the ones you see typically throughout the building right now. And they have mechanical attachments into the building because they would slide off if they were just held down by heavy weights. The PV panels at the low sloped areas of the roof were originally intended and designed to be held down by ballast. So basically just heavy weights that were sufficiently heavy to prevent them from uplifting off the roof. During the final design of the shop drawings and some of the calculations, the vendor underneath Newfield noticed that there was a miscoordination in the amount of wind loading on the actual panels. And that would require additional downward force, if you will, for the panels so they don't fly away if there's too heavy of a wind. The issue is that they couldn't just add more heavy weights because that roof wouldn't be able to support a sufficient amount of weight in order to prevent them from flying away in the case of a sufficiently heavy wind. So in lieu of the additional weights, you would need the additional mechanical attachments down to the roof structure to keep it tied down. Jeff and the structural engineer coordinated with the solar panel consultant, or not consultant, the solar panel subcontractor, to come up with this PCO for the additional attachments to tie it down to the roof. So that's what this is for. It's for the additional mechanical attachments, additional roofing to seal it so that way the penetrations are sealed up for the roofing system, for the solar panel system.
If I can say something, Adam, this is Jeff Brown from TSKP. This number originally started at 60-some thousand plus, but working with our structural engineer, he was able to increase the loading capacity via his factor of safety. And each of these delegated design companies and engineers have different takes on how they interpret or want to ballast or not ballast their system based on different wind exposures and categories that we're in. So we were able to reduce that number in half and reduce the number of physical penetrations to the roof. But in the flat roofed areas, we'll have some penetrations. They won't be as substantial as the sloped roof penetrations. They're basically a little pancake aluminum or steel, galvanized steel plate that then gets fastened through to the deck, and it's not a welded connection to any structural issues at all. So that's the history and the story of how we got these numbers down, and it's at 33,500 is what you're seeing today.
I'd like to move we approve it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve PCO 84R2 for the additional attachments required for the PV panel system. Is there a second? Rich, okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, then all in favor of the motion to approve PCO 84R2, please indicate. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. All right, thank you.
To PCO 99R. This is for AV backbox work throughout the building. So this is one of two PCOs. This one is for new work that needed to occur. The other one that would be forthcoming at a future meeting was for work that needed to be redone. The reason why you're seeing this one and not the other at this point is this one needed to be expedited because it's not reworked. There's a potential for state reimbursement. So we wanted to ensure to get this through such that it could be put in front of the state, whereas the other one, because it's rework, it would not be eligible. The scope for this was at 44 of the rooms throughout the building. There were display mounts that originally had some backer boxes intended. In coordination with Jamie, with the town IT system, he had a different style mount procured that would allow for the scissor-like installation so you could raise and lower it. The issue was that would require a different backup framing system. But in terms of this PCO, it requires additional electrical work, electrical boxes on the side, and some additional conduit. So the scope here is for installing that infrastructure to support the new configuration of TVs at 44 rooms within the building.
I can add to this, Adam. In meeting with Jamie and going through all the past history of all our meetings with the technology and the teachers and everything, it was the assumption from our electrical mechanical engineers and us that there was a system of display panel in all the classrooms and the teacher workstations that would telescope horizontally outward. What Jamie wanted to do after that, after those discussions early on, wanted a guillotine sort of up and down to adjust the height in the classrooms and the teacher workrooms to raise and lower based on a child height so they can interact, or a teacher can raise it up. So the initial one that we had a box with conduits going and feeding into the box with outlets for the display unit, et cetera, which required a hole in the wall. The guillotine system, the sliding vertical track, does not require the box. So we had to take the conduit was coming to the box and run it to some exposed behind the monitor, some wall mounted junctions for the power and the AV and stuff. So that's where the cost came in. We caught it after, I forget how many that were done. So we try to catch it as fast as we can. We even had a meeting with everybody. Jamie was there on the site, and you know, this is all unfortunate, but it was something that Jamie and I think the district needs to have happen. So for the flexibility of positioning these display panels interactively with the students and the teachers.
Right.
So it's frustrating, but I'd like to move we approve it.
Okay, thanks. We have a motion to approve PCO 99R. Is there a second? Kathy, thank you. Any final questions, comments? Then all in favor of approving the motion, please indicate. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay,
No, and Randy, I'm sorry that I wasn't quick enough to switch my camera on to vote at the last one, but I support the PV panel system as well. If
Okay.
Tasha could make that notation.
okay,
I got it.
okay, great.
Okay.
Okay,
The last three items are sort of in joint across three quotations. So these are for basically the ability to have antennas at the pump house and a supporting equipment for two different radio systems for the bus loop, for the bus system coordination. So that way the elementary school can actually communicate with the buses. That what functionality was not available at the existing Southeast school. It was requested by both Bill Treach with facilities and I believe Alan Corson and Principal Rodriguez, as well as having another antenna system. So that way the walkie-talkies around the campus, I believe it also interfaces with the first responder communications, will be able to function. So these will be installed at the pump house. The three quotations are one for one system, one for the other system, and the third for the actual portable units and communication devices. In addition to these three, there would be a subsequent PCO for Newfield for one outlet and some plywood in the pump house. I don't expect that to be particularly a major cost expense, but I coordinated with the vendor about these antennas, and he requested that if we're going to go forward, that he be able to put in the order for the equipment soon. He didn't anticipate a problem, but he just wanted to get it in. So that's why you're seeing this in advance of the single outlet and plywood on the pump house.
so this allows communication directly with the bus drivers, with first responders.
That's my understanding, as well as when Bill and the facilities crews are on site and or someone's at the ball field and someone else is at the school, the radios will be able to talk to each other as well as inside the building, that kind of thing.
Okay. Are there questions on this? Further questions? Okay, so there's three separate quotes. Quote number 8665, dated April 1, 2022. Quote 8736, dated May 18, 2022, and quote 8668, dated April 1. So is there a motion? I think we can do these all together. Is there a motion to approve all three of these quotes? Mary? Okay, thank you, Mary. And then second, Madison? Okay, then all in favor of approving these quotes, please indicate. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. All right, so that's that. Okay, Adam, anything else that you have?
I might have one thing to share with everybody. I've been thinking about the signage on the actual school itself, and I'd like to share my screen to show you what I'm thinking about here, if I can. Let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can.
All right, so, building signage on the school, the one that I did in Stratford for the Victoria Soto School, is basically some either aluminum or stainless steel letters like this that are typically attached to the building. Our spec says that they're 8 inches tall, and let's see here. Our main entrance is here off the bus loop. So I'm thinking somewhere in this area here on the building, or the canopy, probably the canopy where the signage potentially could go. So what I've done here, if I can get to my Revit model, let's go. Let's see if I can see this. Something happened with my site, so ignore the sidewalk not aligning with the canopy here, but anybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on a second here. I got a physical model here, large too, that I've been testing, the ideal spot for this signage. So right now, this here is the main entrance to the school, and here's a secondary entrance, right? They both flank the administrative guidance suite here. So there's straightforward views from outside from anybody approaching the building. So my first reaction was to put it on the canopy centered here along this face here, 8-inch tall letters, Mansfield Elementary School here.
Mhm.
And the thinking is that if I do it back here, you're not going to see it. If I do it on the zinc, you're not really going to be near the front main entrance. If I do it on the gym up here, you're not going to see it. If I do the gym over here, we're getting too far away from the entrance. So my thought is basically to put it right here in front on this fascia with like 1-inch standoffs on the canopy.
Okay.
It'll be subtle enough to follow the datum, the line across there.
That seems to make sense. The fascia is at least, how tall is the fascia?
Well, I'll have to, let's see here. What is it? I think I have an elevation here drawn.
I see.
Yeah, it's a section through here. So I think we're just making it here to the roof.
Okay.
So it would be centered, basically out here, probably in this zone or this zone, one of the two.
Okay.
It's wide enough to fit in between the column supports.
Okay. Chris, you had a
Yeah,
question?
that was my question, Randy. How high did we have to deal with there? And I think that would be ideal to have it be mounted right onto that.
Yeah, it's subtle
Looks
and
like
it's
it's being-
clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll work with the contractor to figure out, what the fascia and what's exposed wood wise, how to attach that. But Al, you don't see any issues with that, right? If he's still there. He's on mute. Anyway, okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, Jeff.
Kathy? You're muted.
I love this idea. I absolutely love this idea, Jeff. I'm wondering, does it have to hang below the roof line or can it be centered above and below? Do you know
Well,
what I mean?
right now it's on the edge of the canopy roof.
Would there be any coming up above the roof line? Or it would just be,
we can we can talk about that. I wasn't planning on it. I was trying to keep it in the zone of the thickness of the roof
Okay.
edge.
well, you're the pro, so I was just
I
thinking.
mean, we
But
can,
I love this idea, Jeff. I
Okay.
really do.
okay. It's subtle, simple.
Mhm.
I
Okay,
think-
great.
And it keeps it off the road.
Well, so
No,
this is
it's-
in addition to the one on the road or
Yes,
only this one?
Oh.
it should be in addition to the one on the road.
Oh,
But I would agree with what everybody's
Maybe we
saying.
can
That,
get Jeff to design one for the road.
I mean, I can look at it, Chris. You and I can look at it. I'll do it on the side. Don't tell Richard. I'll look at it. But I hear what you're saying.
I was saying in place of.
No, I'd agree with what everybody said about the one on the road. If it's slightly smaller, Adam's put quite a bit of work into this, so I'd have to talk with him and the person designing it. Maybe there's a way, Chris, you and I can actually scratch something up and see if it works with the artist, and not to contaminate his work, but or her work, just to sort of give him some input to see if we can come up with something better.
Here's a start.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I think we'll move on. We'll hopefully have the signage consultants with us next time. That brings us then to opportunity for public input. Is there anybody in the meeting would like to address the committee? Okay, seeing none, then the next item is adjournment. Is there a
I move
motion
we
to
adjourn.
adjourn? Thank you, Chris. Is there a second? Kathy, thank you. Then we'll see you all next time. Thanks.
Thank
thank you, Randy.